we live in an age of perpetual urgency. Our attention is treated not as a precious resource, but as a limitless commodity to be sold and consumed. Every glowing screen, every insistent vibration demands an immediate response. We mistake being constantly active for being productive. We assume that if we are not rushing from one commitment to the next, we are somehow falling behind. This relentless pace has created a deep internal dissonance, a constant hum of anxiety underneath the surface of our busy lives. We have built modern existence around anticipation and external validation. Our worth often feels tied to the likes received, the emails answered swiftly, or the flawless performance viewed by others. We live under a tremendous, unseen weight, the obligation to always be available, always improving, always doing. This culture of overload has taught us that stillness is synonymous with stagnation, and silence is simply an absence where sound should be. Look closely at your own internal rhythm. Do you find yourself anticipating the next notification? Are your thoughts a scattered flock of worries about things that have not yet happened, or perhaps those regrets over moments already lost? The modern mind excels at maintaining a complex web of what-if scenarios. We are constantly projecting our energy into a future that may never arrive, or dwelling in a past we cannot retrieve. The consequence is exhaustion, a profound weariness that no amount of rest seems to remedy. It is not merely physical fatigue, it is an emotional depletion. Our souls feel frayed at the edges, constantly reacting to stimuli, perpetually bracing ourselves for the next unexpected demand. We are running on a treadmill set to a speed only increasing over time. The ancient wisdom offered us a radical counter-narrative. They did not tell us to simply slow down, though that is often necessary. Instead, they taught us how to fundamentally change what we believe about noise itself. For the Stoics, noise was not just sound, it was mental clutter. It was the constant internal shouting of demands from other people's expectations, from social comparison, and from our own volatile judgments. They asked a simple but terrifying question. Where does this feeling of panic originate? Is it from the actual event happening in the world, or is it from the story that runs through your mind about that event? The realization is monumental. We have become masters at reacting, yet we are novices at responding. Our immediate, reflexive reaction often carries immense emotional weight: anger flared by a critical comment, anxiety stirred by an uncertain future, disappointment triggered by unkept promises. These reactions pull us into the drama of others and the uncertainty of chance. But what if true peace is not found by controlling external variables? What if it is found by simply drawing a line in the sand, distinguishing between what belongs to our sphere of immediate influence and everything else? This boundary, this internal dividing line, is where all Stoic practice begins. It is an intellectual exercise that requires constant repetition, like muscle memory training for the soul. The challenge laid before us today is to recognize the subtle but persistent tyranny of external focus, to shift our gaze from the endless feed of outside events, the weather, other people's moods, global economies, and gently redirect it inward towards the fragile, powerful core of our own judgment. It requires abandoning the comfort zone of immediate reaction and embracing the disciplined pause. We find ourselves in a sudden, profound silence. The noise of the modern world seems to recede, replaced by the soft echo of history. Here, away from the constant clamor of notifications and demands, we arrive at a place of deep contemplation, an ancient Athenian library, filled with knowledge and sunlit dust. This setting represents not just physical learning, but the slow accumulation of wisdom over millennia. Once, our deepest anxiety was not about unanswered emails, but about reputation, virtue, and one's place in the cosmos. Yet, the core emotional struggle remains frighteningly familiar. We are still susceptible to the gravitational pull of wanting things that are beyond our grasp. Time spent wandering these silent halls invites a crucial question. Why do we find comfort, or even definition, in things that are fundamentally temporary? Consider the architecture around us. Stone was cut, wood was raised, and eventually both will erode back into the earth. The beautiful tapestry of knowledge hanging on the wall, the accumulated thoughts of generations, will one day fade. Everything here carries a lifespan limit, except perhaps only our capacity to judge it. I learned to look at these priceless scrolls and understand that the real source of suffering is not the loss itself, but the expectation of permanence. We treat fleeting achievements, social status, or even intense emotional states as if they were permanent fixtures of our identity. This attachment creates a fragile burden. When the expected thing does not arrive, or when the cherished thing must inevitably decline, the resulting shockwave of disappointment is disproportionate to the item's actual value. The ancient philosophers understood that wanting something, the object of want, is merely a conceptual mistake. It assumes a fixed point in time where something desirable will exist forever, and that our happiness depends on its continued presence. This deep desire binds us tightly to external outcomes, the praise of the crowd, the acceptance of a rival, the stability of fortune. These things are gifts received from countless moving sources, and we have no guarantee of their renewal. The burden of want is therefore a radical form of instability. It means dedicating your emotional energy, your deepest self-regard, to things that operate on borrowed time. Instead of anchoring ourselves in the bedrock of our own character, in who we are right now, with nothing but our judgment as ballast, we build intricate fortresses upon shifting sands of potential pleasure or feared loss. It is a journey away from grasping and towards simple acceptance. We must retrain ourselves to value the momentary reality over the idealized future. This means acknowledging that much of what fuels our stress is not an event unfolding, but a story we are constantly telling about that event, a narrative predicting failure or demanding perfection. Touch upon any scroll here and feel the weight of its passing usefulness. It provided knowledge, yes, but it could never provide immunity from decay. When we grasp for things outside ourselves, the approval of another person's opinion, the favorable turn of the market, the comfort of predictable routine, we are signing up to carry a burden that was never intended for us. We are making our inner peace conditional on external perfection. The Stoic path begins with understanding this premise. If my happiness relies on what others think, or what fortune provides next, I will always be captive. Thus, the first act of freedom is realizing that true contentment must derive from internal sovereignty. It must spring only from the ground we stand on right now, from our judgment alone. We must unlearn the habit of needing to own external circumstances in order to feel whole or safe. This shift is not cynical indifference. Rather, it is profound engagement with reality as it truly is, temporary, uncontrollable, and inherently indifferent to our emotional needs. By viewing things through this lens, the lens of impermanence, we begin the gentle work of unbinding ourselves from unnecessary attachment. We learn that while caring for others is a virtue, making your self-worth contingent upon their continuous goodwill is a profound act of self-betrayal. Accepting this transient nature not only lightens our load, but refocuses our energy on the one thing no storm can touch: the quality and integrity of our own mind. We have spent these chapters exploring the roots of our anxiety. We looked at the endless noise of the modern world and found that much of our distress does not come from external events themselves, but from the stories we tell ourselves about those events. These internal narratives are powerful and often misleading, leading us to worry about things that never happened or to feel pain over things we cannot change. If we are to find genuine peace, we must first master a crucial division of thought. We must learn where our power ends and where the world begins. This is perhaps the most foundational principle offered by Stoic wisdom, the Great Divide. Life presents us with countless inputs: the harsh words of a friend, a sudden shift in job prospects, the weather beyond our window, or the sheer chaos of traffic. Our natural tendency is to try and control every single one of these elements. We argue with the rain, we worry about what others think, and we fret over outcomes that are inherently uncertain. But to attempt total control is to spread ourselves too thin. It is a constant expenditure of energy that leads only to exhaustion. The Stoics teach us instead to perform a meditative exercise, one that requires profound introspection, separating the universe into two distinct piles. On one side, placed gently in our mental hands, are those things entirely within our sovereign command. These include our judgments, the intentions we choose to adopt, and the reactions that spring from our own minds. They are purely internal commodities, owned by us alone. Nothing can strip them away. They belong exclusively to the inner self. On the other side, placed at a respectful distance, are all things external, the actions of others, how success is defined by society, the decisions made by chance, or even our physical health over time. These realms, though massive and demanding, are inherently uncontrollable by us. The difficulty in life does not lie in realizing this divide. It lies in repeatedly, emotionally choosing to ignore it. We must learn the discipline of focus, dedicating all our emotional effort only to the things that genuinely belong inside our boundary. For example, if we receive harsh criticism from a colleague, are we distressed by the words themselves, or by our internal judgment that those words constitute an attack? The word is merely vibration. It has no inherent power until we assign meaning and value to it. Our inner response, our decision on whether to defend ourselves emotionally or to simply observe the event as information, belongs solely to us. This subtle shift of ownership is where freedom resides. It means recognizing that even if the world around you descends into pure chaos, if every notification screams urgency, and every conversation demands immediate input, your ability to pause, to breathe, and to choose your next thought remains sacredly yours. We must cultivate a kind of mental detachment from external validation. Other people's opinions are powerful forces, yet they are fundamentally indifferent to our internal peace. They exist outside the citadel we build within ourselves. If a person judges us harshly, that judgment is simply an observation made by them, colored by their own anxieties and limited perspective. It is not a definitive statement of who we are. To accept this truth requires a profound trust in oneself, a deep-seated knowledge that even if the tide of opinion rolls against us, our core self remains untouched, anchored only to its internal principles. This recognition does not breed apathy, rather, it inspires immense resilience. It allows us to engage fully with life while maintaining an unwavering inner sanctuary. We learn to see emotions and external events not as verdicts on our worth, but merely as passing phenomena, like clouds moving across a vast, immutable sky. By limiting our sphere of concern strictly to the judgments we choose to make, we suddenly find ourselves with an unbelievable reserve of energy. The anxiety that used to grip us over things like career outcomes or other people's approval now feels distant and muted. We are no longer reacting from a place of fear, but responding from a foundation of considered self-possession. This is not merely philosophy. It is a radical reshaping of emotional reality, demanding rigorous practice every single day. It requires us to constantly ask ourselves, is this truly mine? Does controlling this thing require my valuable attention and peace? If the answer is no, Then we must gently let it go. This simple realization that separating what is ours from what is not is the key to dismantling much of the unnecessary suffering that modern life forces upon us. It gives us back the quiet, undeniable power of self-sovereignty. Imagine for a moment the mind as an impenetrable place, a sanctuary built not of stone and mortar, but of disciplined thought. This is the inner citadel. It is not a wall to keep others out, but rather a way of training yourself to recognize when external noise tries to breach your peace. Life itself will always contain conflict, human drama, unforeseen setbacks, the relentless chatter of other people's expectations. These are the siege engines aimed at your tranquility. The wise understanding begins with recognizing where the vulnerability lies. It is not in the storm outside, but in the willingness inside to allow that storm to dictate your internal state. Epictetus taught us that we must treat our minds as this fortress. We must continually guard the gates of judgment. When someone criticizes you, or when a global event causes widespread panic, the initial reaction might be defensive anger or paralyzing despair. This is the breach. You are reacting from outside forces, letting them dictate the state of your soul. To inhabit the inner citadel means cultivating a deliberate emotional withdrawal. It does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. Rather, it means safeguarding your core sense of self from meaningless turbulence. This practice requires constant internal vigilance. Imagine every incoming thought or emotion, be it anger at injustice, anxiety over tomorrow's failure, or resentment towards someone else, as a potential invader approaching the main gate. Instead of immediately responding with reciprocal energy, you must pause. You must observe it. You look upon the raw data of the feeling. I am observing the thought that I must be perfect to be loved. I am observing the anger at this injustice. The Citadel teaches us detachment in judgment. We realize that what we call reality is often colored by our own fears and narratives. The event, the harsh word, the disappointing outcome is simply noise. Your internal attachment to how that event should have unfolded or how it makes you feel is the true weakness. By naming this process of judgment, you strip it of its power. Consider the sheer volume of attacks modern life throws at us. The feed scrolling endlessly with idealized lives, the urgent emails demanding immediate responses, the expectation to always be ascending, never resting. These are constant skirmishes against your inner peace. How do you defend this delicate structure? By building mental habits of resistance to automatic reaction. The discipline here is profound. It is not enough merely to know that something is external and thus beyond your control. You must actively practice withdrawing your emotional energy from it. If a quarrel erupts, you recall the citadel and practice viewing the conflict not as a personal affront, but simply as raw human error, a passing storm of misunderstanding. You observe the passion without becoming consumed by it. This is the art of intellectual disengagement during crisis. You are present in the physical world, engaged with people, navigating difficult conversations, yet your true self remains sheltered behind the disciplined guardrails of the Citadel. Your peace becomes an internal resource, fueled not by external successes or affirmations, but by the sheer strength of your own commitment to rationality. This mental architecture offers unparalleled resilience. When you are constantly prepared to observe your emotions, to see them arise like smoke and pass away like wind, you lose the habit of emotional entanglement. You begin to understand that much of human suffering is self-generated, a consequence of our voluntary agreement to treat temporary discomfort as permanent catastrophe. Thus, we learn to live within this fortified space. When the world outside clamors for your reaction, when it urges you into haste or despair, you draw inward. You remember the disciplined calm at the center of yourself. Your ultimate source of value is not derived from approval, circumstance, or fortune. It resides solely in the quality of your judgment and the unwavering commitment to treating yourself as a sovereign being sheltered within the unshakable boundaries of your inner citadel. We have walked through vast philosophical landscapes already. We learned the crucial distinction between what is truly ours to command and what merely happens around us. The teachings of the Stoics provided a shield, telling us where to place our energy and where to leave the rest. Yet, even with this understanding, the old habit persists. Our minds are deeply conditioned by a modern world that rewards reaction, the instant reply, the vehement comment, the hurried complaint. We still trip over assumptions we have made about reality. We have traveled far from the constant clamor of modern life. We have learned that much of our distress comes not from the world around us, but from the story we tell ourselves about the world. This wisdom has given us immense freedom, the ability to withdraw our emotional energy from things that do not belong to us. But true peace is not merely ceasing resistance. It is embracing reality as it is. It is acknowledging the flow of life without fighting against its current. Consider nature. Think of a mighty river constantly moving, carving new paths over epochs of time. It does not pause simply because it encounters an obstacle. It simply adapts and continues. Our lives are like that river. There will be stretches of smooth, predictable water, but there will also be rapids, sudden dams, and unexpected tributaries. These changes feel jarring, often threatening to pull us off course or overwhelm our fragile sense of stability. The instinct is always to resist change. We want things to be as they were yesterday, stable, understandable, controllable. We build imaginary walls around our routines and relationships, believing that if we just keep everything contained, nothing bad will happen. This desire for stasis, however, is the source of much of our anxiety. It is a deeply human yearning for permanence in an impermanent universe. We must understand the fundamental rhythm of existence. Change is the only constant, everything flows into something else, and everything eventually gives way to nothing. To fight this flow is like trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. It is exhausting, futile, and ultimately painful. The greatest gift, therefore, is the realization that we must learn not just to accept hardship, but to love the fate that has been given to us amor fati. This does not mean passive resignation. It means a profound acceptance of reality, embracing every passing moment, good or bad, as necessary for our path. When we confront what is unchangeable, the loss of a loved one, the passage of time, the shift in global politics, our immediate emotional reaction is often panic. We feel powerless, and that feeling can induce deep suffering. The mind struggles because it wants the pain to stop, but the philosopher understands something deeper. Stopping the pain does not mean stopping existence itself. The unchangeable flow demands a radical internal adjustment. It requires us to drop the desperate need to predict outcomes or control other people's choices. We must mentally practice yielding, not defeat, but mastery over our own response to external forces. Imagine standing at the edge of a rushing river. You cannot stop the water from moving downstream. All you can do is adjust your posture, balance yourself against the current, and move with intention alongside its power. Your focus shifts entirely from stopping the river to navigating the moment as it comes. The beauty of this surrender is that it liberates immense energy. The mental energy we spend arguing with reality, telling ourselves that a situation should be different, or that someone ought to act otherwise, is colossal. That energy can only be reclaimed by allowing things simply to be, by accepting the moment as fate intends it. We stop expending our inner resources on protest. This acceptance is not coldness. It is radical warmth. It is recognizing that life's meaning is found in how we engage with what is given to us. We are meant to be active participants in the unfolding drama of existence, not fearful critics demanding better staging from fate itself. The goal is a quiet confidence, the knowledge that even if tomorrow brings unexpected difficulty or profound loss, our core character remains unshakable because its foundation rests only on internal judgment. We must train ourselves to see moments of struggle not as personal failings or unfair attacks, but as mere data points in the vast experiment of being alive. They are necessary parts of the educational curriculum of life. The falling leaf is simply fulfilling its nature. The challenging conversation is merely teaching us patience. The unexpected setback is only sharpening our resilience. To fully embrace the unchangeable flow is to live with a profound sense of belonging, not because everything is perfect, but because we understand that imperfection and flux are inherent parts of reality. We learn to smile at the unpredictability, understanding that resistance was always the true source of discomfort. When we cease fighting the current, we begin to swim with ease. carrying only our conscious intention and an open heart into the mystery of being. We have spent this journey understanding that much of our distress does not come from the world outside us. It comes instead from the stories we tell ourselves about that world. We learned to distinguish between what belongs wholly within our control, our judgments, our intentions, and our immediate responses, and the vast sea of things that remain indifferent to our will. Other people's opinions, past mistakes, or sudden misfortune. These principles give us a profound sense of freedom. They allow us to gently detach our self-worth from external validation. But inner peace is not merely knowing these rules. It is practicing them when the noise gets loud again. It requires building something delicate and strong, boundaries. The art of the gentle boundary is perhaps the most practical skill the Stoics left for us, a safeguard for the precious commodity we call attention. I must ask ourselves what kind of energy we are spending today. Every yes that feels like a weary obligation. Every attempt to soothe a conflict that belongs entirely to someone else's conscience. These small acts of generosity can become subtle drains on our own vital reserves. They teach us, with time, the crucial difference between genuine compassion and misplaced responsibility. The boundary is not about building walls against humanity. It is about drawing lines in the sand to protect the sacred space of self. It means identifying where another person's drama ends and your own composure begins. When we learn this division, the impulse to absorb unnecessary emotional weight naturally fades away. It becomes an act of radical self-respect. To set a boundary is not always dramatic or defensive. Often, it requires nothing more than quiet clarity. It is simply the ability to observe that something does not serve your inner tranquility, and then choosing gently but firmly to remove yourself from its orbit. This doesn't require conflict. It requires congruence with your own deepest values. Say, for example, think of the time you were asked to participate in a debate or conversation solely because of tradition, even though your spirit felt weary. Your old habit might be immediate compliance, the desire to please, the fear of disappointing another soul. That impulse is powerful, fueled by years of social conditioning and the deep-seated need for belonging. But wisdom whispers a different truth, that maintaining connection at the cost of personal peace is merely an exchange of temporary comfort for chronic anxiety. The gentle boundary manifests as articulating your needs without apologizing for them. It might sound like saying no to a commitment simply because you already have dedicated time for necessary contemplation. It could mean gracefully exiting a conversation when the topics become unnecessarily divisive or malicious, choosing silence over emotional engagement. These moments feel risky at first. They invite resistance from others who are accustomed to your availability. They may interpret your reserve as rejection, which is the unfortunate burden we sometimes bear for practicing self-care. The true work here is accepting that others will not always understand this quiet shift in perspective. Their expectations are often anchored in a reality where our energy was perpetually theirs to commandeer. But you cannot negotiate fundamental principles of self-respect with flawed human understanding. The discipline is to hold fast to your decision regardless of the subsequent ripple of disappointment or misunderstanding. This practice requires immense emotional courage. It demands that we feel discomfort, the momentary ache of letting go of control, of defying an ingrained pattern of people-pleasing. But this brief moment of resistance yields a profound reward, the return to centeredness. Every time you gently enforce a boundary, even a small one, you reinforce the internal architecture of your selfhood. You prove to yourself that your peace is a non-negotiable priority. The gentle boundary allows us to filter out the background static of life. It enables us to hear the quiet instruction within ourselves. What do I truly need right now? Not what does my schedule suggest, or what does my family expect? It guides our attention toward moments of actual substance, the deep work, the quiet contemplation, the relationships that nourish rather than deplete. We are learning to be selective curators of our own focus. We choose where our precious mental bandwidth is spent. If a person consistently demands more emotional labor than they provide support, the boundary requires us to gently limit access. If an activity repeatedly drains your spirit without fulfilling any creative purpose, the boundary suggests redirecting that effort elsewhere. This constant filtering process trains the muscle of internal indifference. It teaches us not to react instinctively to irritation, minor slights, or casual neglect. Instead, we pause and ask, is this detail worthy of my focused energy? Are you protecting your inner calm with this thought? When we maintain this steady stream of self-interrogation, the external noise loses its power. It becomes merely background sound, the rain on the roof, the distant murmur of traffic, no longer perceived as a personal challenge or an urgent threat. The gentle boundary is not selfishness in the common understanding of the word. It is not closing oneself off from connection. Rather, it is recognizing that genuine love and true engagement require mutual respect for boundaries. We are teaching ourselves and others how to participate in relationships built on voluntary participation, not automatic obligation. It elevates our dignity by making us accountable only to our own inner peace. I live the lesson of acceptance first with fate itself, embracing the river's flow. Then I apply that same principle to the messy, unpredictable streams of human interaction. I accept that other people are imperfect and will inevitably disappoint me or ask for too much. My response is not bitterness or resentment, but a calm delineation. This is their circumstance. It does not dictate mine. Ultimately, learning boundaries means mastering the rhythm between engagement and retreat. It means knowing when to pour yourself fully into a cause, and just as importantly, when to draw back and simply replenish your source. It is a continuous calibration of self-worth against external demand. This calm vigilance, this sustained commitment to inner space, is the quiet power that moves us from merely surviving chaos to actually inhabiting a life lived with profound serenity. We begin the day as if facing a blank slate, untouched by yesterday's anxieties or tomorrow's imagined failures. This is the vital morning practice, the moment when we choose not to react to life, but instead to consciously design our internal state. The mind, in the rush of waking up, often defaults to the worst-case scenario, the missed deadline, the inevitable critique, the disappointment. These are ghosts of worry that arrive before breakfast. Marcus would remind us that such projections are merely chains of thought, not unbreakable prophecies. We must learn the ancient art of postponing judgment. We have spent these preceding chapters building the walls of ourself. We learn to distinguish between what belongs to us and what merely passes through our lives. We established boundaries around our emotional energy, recognizing that some external demands are simply not worth the effort of a single care or reaction. But often, even with those guardrails in place, the flow of life is sudden, unexpected, and jarring. Something irritating happens. Someone says something sharp. A situation erupts that feels completely overwhelming. The greatest danger, we realize, is that we fall back into old habits. Our default mode when faced with conflict or irritation is not calm observation, but immediate reaction. It is the instinctual flare of emotion, the anger that rises instantly, the defense mechanism that screams, or the anxiety that clutches us to the seat. This reflexivity is exhausting. It drains the very energy we have worked so hard to conserve. I think of life as a series of sudden transitions. We move from quiet contemplation to abrupt confrontation. And in that micro moment between the stimulus and our response, there lies everything. That minuscule gap. It is the pause. This is where all the wisdom we have accumulated finally must be practiced. We are training ourselves for this space. The challenge of the pause is not merely physical, it is profoundly mental. We must train ourselves to observe what happens in our minds before we allow those observations to dictate action. When someone criticizes us, the immediate thought might fire, "I am wrong," or "they do not understand me." This internal narrative, this emotional leap, is the moment of vulnerability. If we rush from the stimulus to that internal story, we are governed by fear and ego. We are reactive. To achieve genuine freedom, however, we must insert a deliberate space. When the criticism lands or the difficult news arrives, we practice stopping, literally pausing our breath, taking a moment before formulating a defense or an explanation. This pause acts as a kind of mental circuit breaker. It interrupts the automatic cascade of emotion. The initial experience of the pause can feel unnerving. In fact, when we first try it, there is often a strong internal pressure to fill the silence. We are so conditioned by expectation that we panic at nothingness. But this emptiness, this quiet space, is precisely where our power resides. It is neutral ground. It allows us to shift from being merely influenced by external noise to becoming autonomous observers of our own inner life. Instead of saying, "I must respond now," we learn to ask ourselves a more gentle, yet immensely powerful question. What am I observing right now? This reframing turns the confrontation into an intellectual exercise. It separates us from the drama. How do we deepen this muscle memory? Through practice. Every small moment of friction in our daily lives becomes a potential training ground. When traffic slows us down, instead of immediately projecting frustration at the delay or at the other driver, we breathe and simply notice the inertia. That observation alone drains the fuel from the anger. When a demanding colleague sends an aggressive email late at night, the old impulse is to write back instantly, to defend our position. But by invoking the pause, we create distance. We see the words on the screen not as personal attacks designed only for us, but as mere ink and characters, information that requires judgment, yes, but not immediate emotional participation. We allow time to cool the heat of our response. The pause teaches us that most discomfort is manufactured in the interval between event and action. The gap is sacred ground. It is where we assert that although life might be chaotic, our internal landscape does not have to be swept away by every passing wave. We reclaim authority over our responses. We stop simply carrying out a pre-programmed emotional routine. We begin to treat every moment of potential friction as an opportunity for metacognition, the act of knowing how one thinks. We are moving from the role of actors in life's drama, constantly flinching and reacting based on outdated scripts, to becoming skilled playwrights who observe the unfolding scene with a practiced detachment. This cultivated space is not avoidance. It is radical engagement done consciously. It is the power of the breath inhaled before speaking, the silent count of 3 before replying to anger. The pause is our most potent tool against emotional overload. It is the steady anchor that holds us in deep water when the external world threatens to pull us under with its relentless demands and sudden shocks. We are learning not just how to think better, but how to space ourselves out enough to let clear thought emerge from the momentary confusion of feeling. This quiet breath of observation becomes our permanent secret weapon for enduring peace. We have journeyed through the noise of modern expectations, learning to distinguish between our own inner judgments and the unpredictable rush of the world outside us. We understood that controlling others or predicting the future is not just difficult, it is a fruitless expenditure of energy. And so, we arrive at a quiet point, a place far removed from the clamor of external demands. This final lesson asks for nothing but presence. It proposes a radical simplicity, the power of being enough. To be enough does not mean perfect. It does not mean achieving some distant measure of success or eliminating every complication life might present. Instead, it is a quiet internal declaration. It is the deep realization that your inherent worth, your fundamental value as a thinking, feeling self, requires no external validation to sustain it. The Stoics understood this profoundly. They knew that the craving for more recognition, more possessions, more perfect circumstances is perhaps the most relentless and consuming engine of human anxiety. It is a debt we never seem able to repay. Our entire journey has been about building boundaries, the boundary around our control, the boundary between fact and opinion, the boundary in the pause between stimulus and response. These practices taught us self-sovereignty. But even with these tools, the temptation of external chasing remains strong. The world whispers that peace is a destination you must arrive at after completing enough milestones, earning enough praise, or acquiring enough security. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if true tranquility resides not in the achievement, but simply in the acceptance of what already is? To practice being enough means turning away from the comparative gaze. It means refusing to measure your inner state against the curated highlight reels of others. The relentless cycle of comparison, seeing someone else's perceived perfection, and feeling instantly inadequate by contrast, is a self-inflicted wound that rarely heals. We must learn to soothe this deeply ingrained impulse. This is not arrogance. It is radical self-compassion. It is acknowledging the inherent sufficiency of your being, regardless of circumstance or external applause. It means finding quiet contentment in the simple act of existing well. Think of it as dropping the weight of expectation that you have placed on yourself, the burden to perform flawlessly, always be optimizing, or never feel struggle. When we accept that good enough is not a failure, but a completed state, an unexpected freedom opens up. This quiet power resonates deeply with Marcus Aurelius' musings in his own journal, that the true good is simply living according to nature and reason, accepting what comes, and acting justly within your current sphere of influence. The striving mind tends always toward escape from boredom, escape from discomfort, escape from effort. But the practice of sufficiency requires us to plant our feet firmly into the here and now. The here and now is not merely a time marker. It is a sanctuary of pure potentiality. It is the only place where genuine action can take root. If we spend our energy mourning yesterday's failures or fearing tomorrow's uncertainty, we render ourselves incapable of fully inhabiting this moment's generosity. Consider your current life rhythm. Are you running simply because you believe stopping means falling apart? Or are you moving with the intentionality of someone who knows that stillness holds its own powerful meaning? To build this capacity for sufficiency, we must redefine success. Success is not a fluctuating metric defined by societal approval or material acquisition. True success, in the Stoic sense, is internal fidelity, the unwavering commitment to virtue and reason, moment after moment. It is returning repeatedly to the judgment that nothing truly bad can happen to you, because bad only exists as an emotional verdict passed by your own mind. The outer world simply presents facts, and when stripped of the need to prove yourself worthy through overwhelming action, a profound calm takes hold. The quiet power is recognizing the line between effort and necessity. Effort, applied virtuously within the sphere of control, leads to growth. Necessity, when mistaken for external validation or self-worth, becomes chains. To be enough is therefore an act of continuous intellectual disarmament, the systematic refusal to let outside chaos dictate your internal harmony. It is accepting that you are whole already. The journey back to this truth is the final step in building a life that is unbothered, not through sheer force of will, but through quiet, resilient self-acceptance. Let us carry this realization with us. When the noise returns, when comparison whispers its sharp little judgments, when anxiety tugs at your sleeves, demanding more, remember the quiet sufficiency within you. Remember that the most potent act of defiance is simply to cease needing external proof of your value. To rest in the quiet knowledge, I am enough, right here